Hi everyone, and thanks for watching my online lesson on multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. So this first example is the easiest question you can get on one of the 4 rules of fractions. So out of adding and subtracting and dividing and multiplying is by far the easiest. So all we have to do to multiply fractions is we multiply the top 2 numbers together, add numerators. So here we have 3 times 1 to get my new numerator, and to get my new denominator I'm going to do 4 times 5. It really is as simple as that. So that's 3 on the top and 20 on the bottom. Just be careful that you read the question and it doesn't say that you have to simplify your fraction. This one it doesn't, and it's in its simplest form anyway. So that's my answer, is 3/20. The biggest mistake I see students make here is they get confused between multiplying and dividing fractions and adding and subtracting, and they start making the denominators the same. So they start finding a common denominator of 20 and making it more complicated by making the numbers bigger. You do end up with the same answer as long as you do it right, it just makes it much harder. Here's another simple question. So this is work out 60 multiplied by 2/3. Now to make this question just as easy as the last one, I'm going to make them both fractions. So the 2/3 is already a fraction, so I can just leave that one as it is. And I'm going to write 60 as a fraction. So 60 as a fraction is just 60 over 1. Now that works for any number you're given, any integer you're given. If you're given something like 5 times 2/3, I'd rewrite the 5 as 5 over 1. So it's always over 1. Now I've just got a question like before, so I've got 60 times 2 on the top and 1 times 3 on the bottom. So I've got 120 over 3. Now this I can simplify because this just means 120 divided by 3, and 3 goes into 120 40 times with no remainder, so the answer is just 40. Here's a slightly harder question, and it's harder because I've been given 2 mixed numbers to multiply together instead of just 2 fractions or an integer and a fraction. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to change both of these mixed numbers into fractions, and it's going to be top heavy or improper fractions. So I'm going to do this to the side first. So I've got 3 3/4. Now our method for turning this into an improper fraction is we do the 3 times the 4 here at the denominator, and then add the numerator, which here is 3 as well, and then that'll give me my new numerator, and my denominator stays the same. So I'm going to write this working out down. 3 times 4, add the numerator, which is 3. That gives me my new numerator, and 4 is my denominator. So 3 times 4 is 12, add 3 is 15, and that's 15/4. And then my second one, 2 2/3. So I'm going to do 2 times 3 and then add on the numerator, which is 2, to get my new numerator, and my denominator is going to stay as 3. So that's 2 times 3, add 2 for my numerator, and the denominator is going to stay as 3. So 2 times 3 is 6, add 2 is 8 over 3, so it's 8/3. So that's those 2 mixed numbers written as improper fractions. So I'm going to rewrite out the calculation they've given me, and it's going to be 15/4 times by 8/3. Now questions like this, if you were now to try and find a common denominator of 12, you're going to end up with some pretty big numbers that are going to be much more difficult to multiply and much more difficult to simplify as well. So don't forget, we just do the multiplication now. This is the easy part. So I'm going to do 15 times by 8 to get my new numerator, and 4 times 3 to get my new denominator. So 15 times 8 is 120, and 4 times 3 is 12. Now here I can simplify this because this just means 120 divided by 12, and 12 goes into 120 10 times with no remainder, so the answer is just 10. Okay, so on to dividing then. Dividing isn't actually that much harder, there's just a quick step you have to remember to do first. So because multiplying and dividing are the inverse of each other, they're the opposite of each other, then dividing by a number is the same as multiplying by its inverse, by the opposite of that number. And what I mean by this is, here they've given me 2/3 divided by 5/6. This is the same thing as doing 2/3 multiplied by, and all I'm going to do with 5/6 is find its reciprocal. I'm going to flip that fraction over and get 6/5. These two calculations give me the same answer. So instead of trying to work out how many 5/6 go into 2/3 and actually do the division, it's much easier to change it into a multiplication question. Now the way I always remember this, because you have to remember this little step every time, I say keep, change, flip. So if you look here, this 2/3, I have kept it as it is, so keep the first fraction as it is. I have changed the divide into a multiply, because actually dividing fractions is really difficult. But if we change it into a multiply question, then they're not hard at all. And the second fraction, the last fraction you're given, we flip it over. Or we find its reciprocal, so we flip the fraction over. So I'm left with this calculation to do. I've got 2/3 times 6/5, which isn't hard at all. We just do 2 times 6 and 3 times 5. So I get 12/15. This time the question says give your fraction in its simplest form. So I've got to simplify my fraction here. And 3 goes into both of 12 and 15. So I'm going to divide 12 by 3 to get 4. And divide 5 by 3 to get 5. So my final answer is 4/5. Here's one of the hardest questions I can ask you then on multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers, because I am dividing mixed numbers. So as before, my first step is going to be to get them out of this mixed number form and get them into improper fractions. So 3.5, I'm going to do 3 times 2 add 1 to get my new numerator. Denominator stays as it is. So that is 7/2. And 2 4/5. I'm going to do 2 times 5 add 4 over 5. That's 14/5. So I'm going to change the calculation they gave me from 3.5 to 7/2 divided by, instead of 2 4/5, I've got 14/5. And I'm going to do exactly as I said in the last question, keep, change, flip. So keep the first one as it is, change the divide to a multiply, and flip the second fraction over. So instead of 14/5, I've got 5/14. And now do my multiplication. So I've got 7 times 5 and 2 times 14. So that's 35/28. Now this question doesn't say give your answer in a mixed number form, it doesn't say give it in its simplest form, so this answer as it is would get you the full marks. If anyone has actually skipped ahead and tried this question for themselves, both of them will divide by 7, so that's 5/4, or you could have wrote 1 and 1/4. Any of these three answers here, any of these or anything equivalent to these would get you the mark, but it's not asked me to simplify, so I will just stick to that answer there. Okay, here's 2 questions for you to try. We've got a simple one on multiplying fractions and a more complicated one on dividing. If you pause the video, you can unpause it when you're ready to see the solutions. Here's the full solutions. So the first question is a really simple one, and you end up with 6/12, which simplifies to a half. and you have to get the half there because it says give your answer as a fraction in its simplest form. The second question is a harder one, so you should have started first by writing 12.5 as an improper fraction, which is 25 halves, and then do the keep change flip, so flip the second fraction over and change the divide to a multiply. You get 200 over 10, which is actually just 20, so you have to simplify this and get the answer of 20. Thank you for watching.